Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Gaming News, where we discuss everything within the gaming industry. And today we're going to talk a little bit more about Activision Blizzard. We are going to talk a bunch about Twitch and some of the changes that they have been making over the last week or two or three. And we're going to then cover a little bit about E3, and then finally we're going to cover some stuff about Xbox. So, with all of that said, let us get started. So, the first thing that I would like to talk about once again is, of course, Activision Blizzard. We knew that eventually things would happen where we would get more information about what is going on with the lawsuits, etc. And we have information regarding all of that situation, so we're just going to jump straight into that. So, this is a Washington Post article that was published on the 24th that I wanted to bring your attention to with the title Microsoft says it will respect the outcome of Activision Blizzard's union drive. So, this is something that obviously the people working at Activision Blizzard have been working to unionize to protect the employees, to have fair and equal pay, and to be free of rampant sexism and allegations, etc. And this is where we have come to. So, in this article, the writer has a quote from Lisa Tanzi, who said Microsoft respects Activision Blizzard employees' right to choose whether to be represented by a labor organization, and we will honor those decisions. In January, Microsoft announced plans to acquire Activision Blizzard, the embattled video game publisher and developer, for nearly $69 billion in an all-cash deal. 15 workers at Raven Studio, a studio owned by Activision Blizzard, signed a letter on Wednesday calling for Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella to encourage Activision Blizzard to voluntarily recognize their union, the Game Workers Alliance. Microsoft Vice Chair and President Brad Smith was copied on the letter. Now, the letter denounced a man named Reed Smith, who the law firm was retained by Activision previously for publishing anti-union material, and there were PowerPoints, one of which had a slide titled Types of Employees Union Exploits. And what they said was the content of this presentation was created for a workshop in 2013 by lawyers who no longer work at the firm, said Philip McGowan, Director of Corporate Communications at Reed Smith. It does not reflect the way our firm thinks about the rights of employees and employers. These slides have no bearing on the pending CWA representation petition and were not prepared or used by the lawyers representing Activision Blizzard. So there is potentially some improvement here if Microsoft allows for this union to form and to help the employees. I feel like they're all for it. And it's kind of useful that this is happening, especially since we have other news since that day where they said we are going to recognize this union. And then we have a .esports article that says the judge approves Activision Blizzard's $18 million settlement with federal agency. This was published on the 29th. And in it, the article states a judge has approved an $18 million settlement between Activision Blizzard and the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, which investigated the subsequently sued the video game developer and publisher over allegations of sexual harassment, gender-based discrimination, and retaliation. Now, because of this, California's Department of Fair Employment and Housing, another government agency, objected to the settlement since it is also suing Activision Blizzard and it claimed a settlement could damage its own case. Both cases were, of course, happening at about the same time with similar fact patterns, similar evidence usage, and they're now worried that their lawsuit is going to suffer as a result of this other approval. So, as part of the settlement with the EEOC, Activision Blizzard will create an $18 million fund that will compensate victims of harassment and discrimination, expand mental health counseling, and help fund harassment and discrimination prevention programs, among other things. Now, this is important because obviously none of that was done previously. And yes, the DFEH is going to have to deal with situations, especially since they are obviously trying to win their lawsuit alongside. And maybe they were hoping that their lawsuit would win over the EEOC. I am glad that there is a settlement in at least one of the cases, which is fantastic. And now we just have to see what happens with the other one and see if they're negatively impacted, how things are going to go with that. And I'm also very curious to see what happens with the uh, workers alliance, whether or not that's going to have an impact on things, whether or not that's going to change the other lawsuit or anything having to do with that. But I don't know. I'm curious, do you think $18 million is enough? Do you think the expanded mental health training and whatnot will be enough to help Activision Blizzard employees? Do you think it's going to really make any difference? Like, I would love to know how you guys feel about the situation regarding that. That said, the next thing that I would like to cover is information about Twitch. Now, Twitch has undergone a bunch of different things in light of more hate raids, in light of visibility, in light of other different things. And the very first thing that I noticed was a little while ago. This is slightly older news, but still relevant because it sort of goes alongside some of the other stuff. And what I'm talking about here is that Twitch was now going to streamline the process of reporting and appealing any bans to Twitch. Now, previously, if there was something wrong and you wanted to appeal the decision, the process was really slow. People felt like they weren't being heard. It was confusing to find how to appeal, if you could appeal, etc., so on and so forth. Some of which was originally stated in those contracts that were signed by affiliates and Twitch partners. So interesting that they've decided to streamline the process a little bit better. But amazingly, I'm not against this. I think it's fantastic that there's going to be a better appeal process. So starting next week, I can't remember when this was originally posted, but I feel like it was at least 2 weeks ago. So last week, we'll begin rolling out an updated reporting process to Twitch users. Based on your feedback, we've developed a tool with a simpler, more intuitive design to help you file a report and get back to connecting with your community. It includes a new search functionality to help you find the exact report reason you're looking for, as well as tailored menus based on whether you're reporting live content, VODs, or clips. When filing a report, you will still be prompted to select the most relevant report reason and to include as much information and context as possible to help our team process your report quickly and effectively. So, obviously, they're working on a new appeals portal, which you can see here, which we'll get into. But initially, the new flow will be available only to web users, with changes coming to mobile soon after. So if you don't have access to the new flow immediately, don't worry, you'll still be able to report using the old process, which may or may not be good depending on how long that takes. So this is brief look at the new appeals portal. So first you need to know that you actually have to be signed in to your Twitch to be able to see this. Otherwise it just clicks, got it. You've got to log in to do something. So in the meantime, our new appeals portal is live today, and it's giving all Twitch users more clarity and control over the appeals process. This has been a highly requested tool, which is good. I'm glad that they're looking at suggestions and thoughts and features that people have been wanting for quite some time. All of these changes happen with the launch of our new appeals portal, which is located at appeals.twitch.tv. And some important things to note is on your end, it simplifies the process by doing two main things, giving you visibility into the enforcements that are eligible for appeal, and it shows you the status and outcome of ongoing and prior requests, respectively. In most cases, only enforcements issued within the last 60 days will be viewable and eligible for appeals. The vast majority of good faith appeals are submitted within 60 days, so that window helps us weed out spam and ensure our teams can resolve valid appeals more quickly and fairly. However, if you're currently serving an indefinite suspension, even if it began more than 60 days ago, it will be available via the portal, so you have an opportunity to have your case reviewed if eligible. Appeals that are being reviewed will show as pending. Once your appeal has been decided, it will show as either accepted or rejected. You'll also still get an email update when your appeal is resolved, which now includes more detail on why we made our decision. Also useful because, again, Twitch hasn't exactly been the most transparent of organizations when it comes to situations of people perhaps being wrongfully banned, or it is uncertain as to why they were banned. So, to make the appeals portal as accessible as possible, we've added it to your profile drop-down menu under Safety. This link is accessible even if you are currently suspended from Twitch. And so the fact that even if you're suspended, you're still going to be able to look at the appeals page is incredibly useful in my opinion. So of course on the blog there are FAQs that you can take a look at, and I will link down below, but there are other pieces of information that Twitch has released more recently. On March 31st, we had Mod Appreciation Day, and that means there is a new Mod Love emote that you can spam, and a bunch of people were eligible for the $100 gift card, and a couple of people have their trip paid to TwitchCon, which I think is fantastic that they want to show more love to the moderators and trying to do right by moderators on Twitch, which is great. With Mod Appreciation Day, they also gave us a new mod feature, which is an announce. So this is similar to a highlight feature where you can now remind people of, say, giveaways or welcoming people into the stream or different things like that, remembering to hydrate, or maybe just a quick refresher of rules like don't forget harassment isn't tolerated in this channel, or different things that you could use the announcement feature for. Currently, this shows up as simply a highlighted message. It does not pin to the top of chat like I had hoped, because again, if you have a giveaway going on or something, it would be great to have that announcement, but these announcements will be able to stand out in chat, and you have the choice of border colors to use to highlight the messages with. Now, the colors, as far as I know, is still not fully functioning. The announcement feature is sometimes functioning and sometimes not. It depends. Twitch is already aware of that, but I find that this is a really good feature, and if you want to see what that looks like, Here is another clip. I actually did test it in one of the channels that I moderate for, and I can confirm that it does look like that in chat, but it is still part of the chat. It is not a pinned message, nor do you have the option to pin the message. And finally, there is one other thing that I would like to make light of when it comes to Twitch. Now, some of you may remember a while back that you could use channel points with which to boost a channel to maybe give that channel visibility on front page or recommended channels for you based on what you've watched, and hopefully that would help the smaller streamers get more visibility on Twitch. And then they got rid of the option to use channel points, and then they made it so that you had to effectively pay to get onto the front page or onto featured or recommended. And of course, as we suspected, this was not going to fully turn out well because there are trolls, and it's amusing that we are April Fools and we're talking about this, but Twitch halts the paid channel boosts after people pay to get porn on the front page. And this is an article by PC Gamer, where in October 2021, Twitch began testing a new feature that enabled viewers to pay money to boost a streamer's channel to the site's front page in order to give it greater exposure. That experiment has now come to an end, at least for the time being, as troublemakers were taking advantage of the system to push porn to the top of the heap. So the paid boosts were first announced in September of 2021, and they work in the same way, except that real money is involved. So previously, like I said, you could use channel points to boost a channel, which would allow the community in good faith to boost a channel to the front, and that would be really good. But then to turn around and make it so that you could no longer use channel points and that only people who have the money to pay can boost was not taken well by the community. It was obviously not received the greatest, and many expressed concern that the favored channels that are already popular were in a better position to pay their way to the top. And unlike cheering or channel subscriptions, streamers made no money from the paid boost. All of the money went to Twitch. And now it's making it look like if you are a small streamer, if you do not have money, if you do not have people in your community who make money, sucks to be you. We're going to push you further down and allow the people who are already at the top to make more and to have more visibility, because that makes sense. So, a Twitch representative clarified that the paid boost program ended in late 2021, but a similar new program called Boost Train, which enables viewers to boost a channel by purchasing subscriptions in bits, went live early in March. And this is when things went sideways. On March 30th, users on Twitter and Reddit began to notice live channels on the front page streaming porn. It was clear the channels in question were being boosted to the front page as they were tagged with a promoted by the streamer's community label. And thankfully it is blurred out, but you can see it here on this tweet that was indeed the case for certain people, and it's why a lot of people don't look at the front page. You have certain channels that you already follow, and unless people recommend you other channels and you take a look at them ahead of time, generally speaking, many people don't really look at the front page. So, the Twitch rep confirmed that the boost train experiment has now been paused because of safety related issues that came up during testing. Specific reasons for the halt weren't provided, nor did Twitch say whether boost trains might be returned in some modified form in the future, but updates on new features aimed at improving channel discoverability will be shared when they become available. Now, This is where I look at Twitch loves to take, one or two steps forward and then 50 steps backwards. They are giving appreciation to the moderators. They're giving us, a couple more tools. They're trying to do their best to get rid of the hate raids and botting situation to whatever degree that they're actually doing that with. They are looking for ways to boost discoverability. They're helping people with their appeals process and making it more streamlined. And all of those things are incredibly good, but the boost trains and the paid promotion to reach the top is not the type of discoverability that people want. And Twitch continually tries to give features that help, but of course, there's going to be bad apples that turn around and do things that ruin it for everybody. And they're going to have to find a way in which people can legitimately help streamers get some visibility, because we all know social media doesn't necessarily work depending on how you go about it. But there are so many streamers that it can be very difficult to reach that status. And that is why you see a lot of people going into different things and diversifying their income. So, let me know what you're thinking about these Twitch features, what you're thinking about this specific situation, and what you think about the boosting, if you think it's good or bad ultimately. Maybe ideas on how to change it for the better, perhaps. But I feel like this was enough of a misstep here that even with the good that Twitch has done recently, there's still a lot they have to work on, and hopefully they will figure that out soon. Next, I would like to talk very briefly about E3. Now, E3 is a conference for game developers and professionals to go take a look at new video games published by different companies, and to go talk to developers, maybe do some interviews, that kind of thing. Previously, because of the COVID pandemic, they moved to a digital format where I believe it was last year we could see E3 presentations online through videos and whatnot, and participate in that way so that you were safe and you didn't have to physically go to the conference, which was a fantastic change in my opinion, although there were still some issues that I personally had with it, but that is neither here nor there. And this year, even though there was not going to be a physical appearance, they have also canceled the digital appearance of E3 as well. So, after previously canceling its in person E3 2022 event, the ESA has now informed its partners that there will be no digital equivalent this year, meaning E3 2022 has been fully canceled. So, this was broke by a tweet from Razer's PR lead, Will Powers. Said that they received an email and that it was fully canceled, and then IGN went to verify the information. So, according to sources speaking to IGN at this time, discussions around E3 had been fraught throughout the year, with third parties normally involved finding the ESA's ongoing silence regarding their plans frustrating. Sources connected to the event tell IGN that discussions about a possible digital equivalent has been ongoing ever since, but without strong momentum to drive them. Instead, the ESA seems to be making plans to regroup for a larger comeback in 2023. Now, the interesting thing about this is previously, when we had E3 for the last couple of years or so, Xbox and PlayStation, I believe, decided not to show up to E3, that they would have their own conference, their own showcase that were much shorter, more digestible formats where they could showcase the titles and IPs that they would be releasing. And E3 still was relatively successful without these particular publishers being at the event, and there was still a lot of different content that you could see, a lot of industry information and tons of trailers still, because you have a lot more developers being showcased and that kind of thing. And we would also see new IPs coming out through other gaming events as well. Things like the Game Awards featuring more new trailers for games that people didn't know about, etc. And now we're at a point in time where E3 was reportedly very busy, very difficult to get at anything, and even though it was like the place to be, it became very frustrating for a lot of people to even try some of the games or to get some of the interviews with the people that they wanted to, and it just became too big and too cumbersome to really do anything. And a lot of people expressed struggling with going to E3. And now we're at a point where, with all of these other outlets informing us about the new IPs that are coming out, and places like Sony having their own digital or physical event to showcase what's in the pipelines for everything having to do with them, they no longer need a huge convention like E3. And so now the question is, do we need E3 to come back? If you want to meet the devs, what if they have their own events that are smaller, that are more manageable, that are less costly? So I'm wondering if E3 is required anymore. With all of the information that's out there, with all of what's been happening in the gaming space, I'm curious, do you feel the same? Do you think that losing E3 is a big deal for the year? Do you feel as though next year is going to be successful if people go back to it? Like, how are you feeling about that? Because I personally am not sure that it's really required in order to get information about gaming, new IPs, etc. Let me know in the comments or in Discord. I would love to hear your thoughts about E3 for 2022. And with that, we're going to go into the final conversation, which is about Xbox. And this is an article published by Kotaku. I know, spare me. But in this case, once again, Kotaku did a nice deep dive into a situation, and I wanted to make light of it because it is a big deal, obviously. So, what we're talking about here is allegations of sexism, bullying, and burnout inside the Microsoft studio behind State of Decay 3. Now, this is an incredibly long article, but there are a couple of paragraphs that I would like to highlight and get your thoughts on. And from that, I will just link the article in the description and you can read the rest of it at your leisure. So, this is written by Ethan Gatch. He says the video game industry faces a long overdue reckoning. The average game developer is underpaid relative to the generous bonuses and shareholder payouts enjoyed by the CEOs above them, and recent reports and lawsuits have been uncovered a wide range of mistreatment across companies, big and small. Many feel that something needs to change, and some industry leaders have openly agreed. But change is hard. It takes time. It can be costly. Maybe that's why even companies who talk a good game on workplace culture and responsibility can still come up short. Our responsibility is simple: do everything possible to ensure that this entire industry is about treating every single person with dignity and respect, Microsoft Gaming CEO Phil Spencer said on stage to a room full of game developers last month at the 2022 DICE Awards. The Xbox veteran has been beating this drum for a long time, but even he admits that he and other leaders hasn't always risen to that challenge. Spencer's comments could apply to a lot of gaming studios. One of them is Undead Labs, the maker of the survival base building series State of Decay. Spencer helped Microsoft acquire the studio almost 4 years ago. Housed in an old brick building in downtown Seattle, 20 minutes from Microsoft's sprawling 500-acre headquarters, the lab has undergone a massive transformation from lean indie to first party studio with AAA ambitions in the years since it was sold. Undead Labs doubled in size but lost its charismatic founder. It's working on the ambitious sequel State of Decay 3, but after several years is still trapped in pre-production. And recently, it faced allegations of mismanagement, burnout, and misogyny as it struggled to live up to its promise of being the welcoming, diverse, and inclusive Xbox first-party studio itself touts. So, obviously, there was a lot of research and a lot of interviews done by former employees of the studio, maybe even current employees. And some of what they had to say was not fantastic. At first, some employees were worried that the Microsoft acquisition would change the indie studio for the worst. Now they worry the 2 trillion company's incredibly hands off approach allowed dysfunction to fester, leaving some of the studio's more vulnerable employees to fend for themselves. As one former developer put it, we were afraid they would come in and change our culture, but our collapse came from within, and we could have used Microsoft's help. And before I continue, this is exactly the sort of feeling that I have with respect to Twitch and Amazon, where even though Amazon owns Twitch, Amazon allows Twitch to do everything itself, and it mostly takes a hands off approach, which, as we have seen over several years, that while Twitch has made leaps and strides forward, they have also tumbled backwards significantly. And in some cases, it feels as though Amazon maybe should step in and help make sure that Twitch doesn't ruin the reputation of Amazon. But that's just on that specific topic. And in this case, being acquired by Microsoft, while a lot of people feared the change, in this case, there was no change to be feared, and that people were still being abused in various different ways, and it hasn't been good for the studio. So, we continue. According to a Microsoft spokesperson, these positive changes have included an entirely new leadership team, diverse hires in 2021 that were 42% female or non binary, and 29% from a racial or ethnic minority group, and a March 2022 health survey with 84% of respondents willing to recommend working at Undead Labs. But current and former developers say those numbers don't tell the full story of the painful last couple of years, or of how committed the studio or Microsoft will be to supporting its latest waves of hires when the going gets tough. The culture the studio had up until recently was not the most hospitable for anyone that was not a white cishet man, said one current developer. It's improved in the last 6 months or so, but the studio also hired a lot of diverse talent that it did not adequately support in the past. And again, this just goes to show you that even though numbers wise you are helping, and on the surface it looks like you have incited change, ultimately Undead Labs has undergone a lot of issues, not just with these particular situations having to do with inclusion, misogyny, etc. But they've also had other issues just from the developing the game side where people just weren't getting the game together maybe as quickly as they intended, or because Microsoft has taken that hands off approach, that they're still sort of slowly going through the muck. And maybe that's to not have crunch. Who knows? When I interviewed at the lab, I was sold the idea of a studio in transition that was making diversity, equity, and inclusion a top priority, said one former developer. What it was in actuality was studio leadership painting a DEI face for Microsoft, while women were consistently ignored, dismissed, interrupted, talked over, and blamed. Women's opinions would be outright rejected, even for extremely basic code or games knowledge, said another. No one would listen to them. Even women in director level positions were outright ignored, talked over, and blamed for problems. And this is what they're talking about when Undead Labs basically imploded in terms of DEI and effects. Now, there's obviously a lot more to this article, and I find something very interesting at the very end of this article, or very close to the end of this article, which is in mid February, Holt held an all hands meeting telling staff a negative story about gender discrimination could be coming and to not discuss it on social media. Some were disappointed he didn't use it as an opportunity to talk more candidly about some of the studio's issues, according to two sources who were present. And this is what I want to talk about. It's all well and good for people to say that the numbers show that we are being diverse, that we are being inclusive of different people. But the real story does not come from numbers. The real story comes from how do you actually treat people at your company. And if you are told not to talk about what is happening at the company, that should be a red flag. I have talked about this previously, where if you are warned not to talk to media about the situation, that should automatically give you a sense of who you're working for and what types of morals that they have. Because again, it is your mental state, it is your financial state, it is you that has to bear the brunt of that. Forget the reputation aspect. You have to consider, is being paid properly and treated properly worth more to you than just how is your boss going to react and are you going to get fired? Now, I understand that if they fire you, one, keep in mind that they have to fire you for a reason, for cause, especially if you're not in probationary period, right? If you're fired, even if they give you some bullshit reason, the better option is to find a different studio to work for that will treat you better, that will listen to people. Your mental health is not worth the cost, in my opinion, of some schmuck telling you there's going to be some negative stories that are going out there. So I'm going to cover my ass and not give a shit about anything that you guys say because they will continue to push it down. They will continue to hide it. And even though Microsoft is trying to build upon a good foundation, it doesn't mean all of the studios that they own are doing the same. It doesn't mean anything, really. They don't know what is going on at absolutely every single company because those companies are going to save face in whatever way that they can so that they can continue to thrive and they will continue to push you down. And it's up to you to decide what's more important here because numbers tell you jack shit about the real implications. But that is just my thought on the whole situation. It's up to you what you think or believe or how you treat this. I urge you to read this entire article because it is quite in depth and very interesting and very telling about, once again, even smaller studios owned by larger studios getting screwed over and people not being treated or paid well. So I'm very curious to see how you feel about this particular story, or about E3, or about Twitch, or about Activision Blizzard. And otherwise, thank you so much for continuing to support me on Patreon. I do these videos ideally every week. Thank you so much. Don't forget to follow me on social media pages. You know the drill. All of that will be linked below, along with all of these articles. And with that, you guys have a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.